Dan,
Hey,
how are you, man? Good to see you.
Long time no see.
Yeah, no, man. How you been?
Good. Things are good. Midterms just got done.
Heck yeah. So tell us about yourself. What branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Marine Corps.
Nice. And what was your MOS?
I was an O211, counter intel, human intel.
All right, cool. So for those of us who don't know what on earth that means, i.e. me, because I was in the Navy and we didn't use cool MOSs like that, what exactly did you do in the military?
It was my job to build and develop relationships, to collect information from human sources.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. All right, cool. So like, how would you say that your transition to higher education was?
It was pretty good. So I was in the military for 12 years, joined in 2008, initially in the air wing, then moved over to the counter intel. Had a few deployments. I got home from Iraq in 2018, and my wife was pregnant at the time. She was a full-time law student, and I remember getting home from Iraq, and the next day I flew out to her school, like Ithaca. She went to Cornell, and I was like, man, I don't know if I can handle like any more of these deployments. Like, it was super taxing, not only like being gone, but just it wasn't necessarily a good life. After you get the first deployment out of the way, it's kind of like,
it's exhausting. All right. Yeah, it's a lifestyle change.
So she was like, well, why don't you go to college? And I had never considered it before. I joined the military because I got kicked out of college.
Same.
And I don't like sitting in a classroom. I mean, it's funny, like, joined the military to avoid college, but I ended up doing more school in the military than I would have had I just... Anyway, so since she was at Cornell, I thought that was so far out of my reach. I ended up reaching out while I was there. Like, as soon as she mentioned it, I Googled like Cornell Veteran Club, reached out to like the leader of that.
Yeah.
I forget his name, haven't been in contact since, but he told me about Warrior Scholar program.
Warrior Scholar Project, yeah.
Project. So I started looking into that, and I was like, oh, wow, interesting, like enlisted to Ivy League program. And I applied, and I remember it being full.
Yeah.
And then one of the people there, Jesse, called me, and he was like, hey, we have a spot that opened up at Columbia. Would you like to attend that one? It's in New York City. And complete honesty, I didn't even know what Columbia was. Like, I didn't know, like, is this a good school or not? Like, I had to Google it. And
Yep.
So Googled, and I was like, oh, wow, yeah, it's a good school. Okay. Yes, I'll absolutely do that.
Assuming from the conversation we're having now, you kind of liked it.
Yeah. So went through Warrior Scholar, ended up applying to Columbia, and then I went back to my unit. I had another like pseudo deployment, the Native Fury in UAE.
Yeah.
Ended up getting accepted to Columbia while I was there. My wife told me she was pregnant while I was there as well, so I was like, perfect timing. Came back home, like made the decision I was absolutely getting out, and started like the transition process.
Heck yeah. Cool. I love it, dude. So what would you say that being a student veteran on this campus means to you?
So I've been here for about 3 years now, and I think my ideas kind of changed.
So tell us about it.
Over those 3 years. When I first got here, I was, I'd say, argumentative and combative, and I think I misunderstood the purpose of school. And I had this idea that it's like a means to an end, and like I'm just here because I need to get a degree, like checking the box. And I wish I could go back and apologize to some of my professors for like being that argumentative person that thought I knew everything. But now I think it's almost like a responsibility to represent people from our background better. And like you hear these stories about veterans that come to school and it's like they think they're God's gift to the education system for some reason, or like...
Oh yeah, trust me, I know.
And I started treating it more like, not a hobby, I don't know the right word, but like it's exciting to learn now.
Yeah.
You hear these things, or I'll be reading something like Plato, for example, where he talks about, let's slipping my mind now. But
Allegory of the cave.
Like how like a warrior, if you will, needs to like be based in philosophy, and like the protectors of the city, as cheesy as it sounds, like, and you start to hear like the origins of things you've been told during your time in the military.
Oh yeah, dude, you're giving me flashbacks to my time in poli-sci. Ugh.
I mean, exactly, and
No,
it's like, oh wow, like this is way bigger than like just me being a student here and like trying to get what I want.
It's cool because like you represent something bigger than yourself, but at the same time, it's also you're on your own path to like individual growth. So you have like this weird symbiotic relationship with what you're doing and who you're representing, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it is this transition of like my old life to my new life and like what I want to do. And school kind of gives you that transition period. Like it gives you another 4 years of safety where you're still like getting the GI Bill. You're in a community, depending on the school, like of like other veterans, and like it's almost like a buffer between, like if I didn't go to school when I got out, I'd be screwed, I think, like not only mental health wise, but like community wise and like purpose.
It's almost like the community you have in the military, which is, I feel, is something that is like so innate yet unspoken, I guess. It's like literally you are all wearing the cloth of your country. Thus, like you are part of something by default. And one of the challenges, I think, for a lot of military veterans when they get out is that they lose that. And whether or not they want to, you know, discharge from the military because they had a bad experience like I did. I hated my NCOs. I was like, screw the Navy, I'm done with this. But losing that is a difficult part of the transition, and I see a lot of veterans lose that. But you know, when you come to a university like this and you get to be in classrooms with other individuals who are intellectually, you know, as gifted or driven as you are, you kind of get that bat.
Or above where I'm at, which is nuts. Like in my kids, like 18-year-old kids that I'm like, this person is brilliant.
It's like, how are you this eloquent, sir? Like, you could barely vote. But yeah, dude, it's cool because like, you know, you don't realize how much that is part of the veteran experience, and then like you almost, it's not necessarily that you're filling a gap or filling a hole or refilling a role, so to speak. It's like you get to embrace that part that the military instills with you in a community like this, at a school like this, where, you know, you can then turn that into something of, I don't know, advocacy or working for greater good outside of yourself, maybe. But yeah, man, I want to shift gears now to like 2 more questions and just, you know, have a casual conversation. But you know, would you ever say that you have felt out of place here at Columbia or being a student veteran on campus? I don't know if you left the military and came straight to Columbia, or did you go to community college first, like some veterans, or let's say a 4-year institution and then transferred here like I did?
So I did community college when I could, when I was in.
Cool.
So I had like 4 or 5 classes that really helped with my transfer. Like high school, I think I had a 1.3 GPA, and college was just like a 0 because I failed out. So hey, dude,
I dropped out too. Skyrim came out in 2011, and so did I, dropping out of college. So, trust me, I get it.
The transition, I think, is, the question was,
have you ever felt out of place here on campus? Sorry, I got really abstract and convoluted there, but like the ultimate question is, have you ever felt out of place here as a veteran on this campus?
Oh, I've absolutely felt out of place on campus.
Mind telling us why? Dude, be blunt.
There's so many things, like, your veterans, well, I'll speak to my own experience. So, I am 12 years in the military. I'm a father. I'd say I came here with like the views that the military instills in you. So this, like, the military is predominantly conservative, in my experience, like politically, like course. Even emotionally, like you don't express stuff, like you don't go to medical, you don't talk about your mental health, you shut up and do your job. Yeah, and I mean, I think when I first came here, like some of the things that my classmates cared about with like diversity and like, I don't know how to say that right. It seems like my classmates cared about stuff that were so trivial, or like they would care about things because like social media told them to. So I'd go into class like angry. Like,
I mean, it's part of the transition, dude. It's you come from a lifestyle where that is stuff that isn't necessarily spoken about, or
there's also this element of like an academic setting versus an operational setting.
Yes.
Like during my time in the military, I had a very unique opportunity to get close to like my primary mission, if you will, was like to combat ISIS. So on a daily basis, like my responsibilities in the military were to like sit down with various violent militia groups, sit down with like politicians in these countries or merchants in these countries, and like really like figure out like what their experience is and collect information from them to like paint a better picture of the battlefield. So my professors, I geared my first few semesters, like I took upper level classes, like I took conflict experts, which looked at international politics and conflict. It was like a master's level class. So my classmates were very intelligent when it came to like studying and research and writing papers, and I lacked that completely. But what I had was, we studied things that I had a direct like hand in doing.
Yep. So you had the first-hand experience.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
And like bridging that gap between having the academic abilities to like articulate myself and like articulate my feelings and opinions when it comes to these matters. Since I didn't have that, like it resulted in a lot of frustration. Like it turned into like, wow, this professor has no idea what they're talking about. Or they're wrong and I'm right. When in reality, like their data set was different from mine.
So in that case then, I mean, going from the military to academia is kind of like going from a lifestyle of confrontation to a lifestyle of exploration, because in college you're exploring, I don't know, academics, identity politics, I don't know, hobbies, your very notion of yourself, right? So how would you say that you were able to get over the confrontational aspects that you may or may not have carried with you after the military? Because it sounds like now, 3 years into your time here at Columbia, you're, I don't want to say more open-minded, but like less of the confrontational person is the wrong way to describe this. But when we first sat down, you described yourself as like getting out of the military and still having some of like the mindset of the military. So if you do not believe that you carry that now, and if you do, more power to you, dude. You're never going to tell anybody how to live their life. But how would you say that like this school has kind of shaped, or I don't know, your path through academia has kind of helped you either become more or less confrontational and more open to academic exchange per se?
I had a university writing class, and the professor told me, he's like, nobody else's opinion is gonna take away from your personal experience. And he like explained to me, and I don't know why it took him explaining this, like it makes sense and I should have known this, but like, your individual experience is completely true and accurate, but like what some of your professors and like the study of say international politics is like more general and broad, and it looks at like different circumstances and situations, and like while yours may be fully accurate, like that doesn't mean that theirs aren't. And like he kind of reminded me that like everybody here is intelligent in their own way, and I almost owe it to them to hear their point of view, because they didn't get here like being stupid or misinformed or like not knowing like I perceive them to be. And he was like, you need to like at least give them the opportunity to express a belief. You don't have to agree with it, but it's a good idea to respect their opinions and acknowledge that they're intelligent as well. It's just a different sort.
An exchange in the marketplace of ideas, right?
And I mean, that's what, sitting down with him and like hearing these things was like, wow, yes. How did I not realize that? Especially coming from a job in the military that like, it was my sole purpose to get to know people and understand what motivates them. And I couldn't do that, you know, like.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, dude, I had NCOs who were not good at what they did. But to your point though, dude, When you first got here, did you ever expect to have like a conversation or exchange or office hours or a relationship with a professor like that where you can, kind of have that like eyes wide open experience that like, you're like, oh wow, you are right. This is going to change the way that I approach something.
I think I came here with the opinion that school was pointless and I hated school because of my past experience with it. I feel almost grateful for doing 12 years in the military because now I appreciate learning for what it is. Like, it's no more about getting the check in the box. It's like, wow, I want to do this because it's interesting and I'm curious. And after a semester or two, like, you start to see, like, your opinions change and you become more informed and you can articulate like your arguments better.
Yep.
You can also like change your opinions. Like, it's not as structured as the military and like, it's reflecting on, it's a whole process that changes a lot of things.
Totally understand. So when you began that answer, you mentioned something when you got out of the military, you hated school and you hated college and you weren't really sure if you wanted to go. I was in the same boat when I got out of the Navy, and I find that a lot of enlisted folks are in that same boat. They're dudes like you and me who, dropped out of community college or failed out of college, who got addicted to playing Skyrim and decided to leave community college when they enlisted. But what would you recommend for those enlisted folks who have that mindset of college isn't for me and they're coming up to the end of their enlistment? This will be our last question too.
I'd say...
Wow, let's end on a high note here, dude.
I had this idea, it's funny, like, I'm like absolutely covered in tattoos. When I did Warrior Scholar Project, I came here and I was like nervous that the staff would judge me for like being this like dumb Marine that's covered in tattoos. And the reality was so much different. And like, I had all these preconceived notions that like these people are so much smarter than me. Like, I don't belong at a school like this. Like, the Ivy League seemed like this unreachable goal. And then I get here and it's almost like, wow, I was so wrong. Like, I do have value. I do have things to add here, regardless of jobs too. Like, I see so many veterans from different backgrounds and it's like, I learned stuff from them just as much as I learned stuff from other traditional
professors,
students.
Traditional students, yep.
You're getting paid to be here. There's no reason not to. Even if it doesn't work, at least make your own mind up. Like that 4 year, if you did 4 years and got out, like those 4 years changed something in you. And when you get in an environment like this where you're like learning things that you care about and like, it's fun and you're paid to do it.
Hell
like,
yeah.
Why not?
Love it. Cool.